Morning, everybody. Let's begin with prayer. Oh God, we are grateful that in life and in death we belong to you. Because leaving this earthly life and joining your kingdom in all its fullness causes us to face things we don't always like to think about, losses and goodbyes. It's not necessarily easy for us to think or to talk about plans and hopes. Guide us in these classes to pray and to think deeply and to trust one another with things that are important to us. In Christ's name, amen. Good morning again and welcome. We are glad you are here, those that I know well and those that I know a little less well, but it is good to see you all, and we're joined by 4 or 5 people online. We are recording this so that it is available for those who could not come today, so you will want to keep that in mind if and when you respond to anything I ask. If there's something you'd rather not have recorded, you may choose not to say it, or you may choose to say, delete that. And we'll have Brian edit the tape. He's got to edit 20 minutes of recording before we started anyway, off of the tape. So this idea of having a class on planning for the time surrounding our death came about from someone who asked, could we do those issues of aging classes again? We have questions. We're redoing our arrangements. And as I thought about what all we might include, a clergy colleague said, hey, I've done that class in my church and I've got this wonderful booklet. If you want it, I will send it to you. So that's what we're starting with today. And today we're going to talk about the emotional and spiritual things, our wishes. By the way, if you need something to write on, there's all kinds of hymnals and things in the rows that you can put your paper on top of. So today we're going to deal with the contents of this booklet. Some of it is foundational for what we'll look at the subsequent weeks. It's next Saturday and then the following Wednesday evening. Some of it is a little bit in the booklets duplicates what we'll look at in some other lessons, but in general, I thought it was very helpful for me, and so I hope it's helpful for you. Next week, I have some books that I will give you because there's no way we could get through all of it in a week. You don't owe me anything for it. It's part of my professional expense account, but it's called In Case I Get Run Over by a Bus or something like that. And it walks you through all kinds of things that you might want to think about leaving information for whoever has to deal with your affairs after you die. The third thing then, the Wednesday evening, will be somebody from Legal Services of Jackson, of South Central Michigan, talking about and answering questions about all of the legal documents that you need. And a lot of you, maybe all of you, have them. You may need to update them as we do, but you'll have the professional advice. So anything I say is not a substitute for professional advice. There will be times that I will invite you today to share with whoever you came with. If you came with somebody, as we talk through certain sections, those of you that came by yourselves may want to gather in a little group and share what you feel like sharing. Some of these things will be private and you want to wait till you get home or till you think about it more. So the emotional and spiritual aspects of getting our affairs in order. So if you want to open your booklets, if you need a pen or pencil, I put some on the back table. So I'm going to basically read through this, but most of it is going to be you filling in the blank. So there's not a whole lot after the first page that you're going to just have to listen to me read what you could read yourselves. Why don't we like to talk about death? Maybe it's because we don't know what happens after death. Maybe because it's painful to think about things without someone there, or maybe talking about it makes it more real, or we feel that there's plenty of time to talk about this stuff. Well, sometimes that's true and sometimes that's not. It's important for us to talk about it so that our wishes may be known. People may think they know what you want, or you may think they know what you want. But if you don't tell them, they don't know for sure. If you're walking through this process with your loved ones, you'll know what they want and they'll know what you want. I have a colleague whose son was killed in an automobile accident at the age of 19. They just happened to have been discussing at dinner one night whether different ones among them would want an open or closed casket if they died suddenly. So they knew he wanted a closed casket. You don't usually hear that from your 19-year-old child, but they had had that conversation, and so they knew it. Family divisions can take place when everyone isn't on the same page. Even if people understand what your wishes are, family divisions could still happen, but the chances are less. You have the conversation so that your family, your friends, and your caregivers know what to do, and so this is a gift to your loved ones. Your wishes are important, you matter. I am hoping that by the time we finish these 3 sessions, each of us will have a notebook, and you'll have to buy your own binder or recycle one, but a notebook that has all of the information in it labeled "when I die" or something like that, and your family members or whoever is going to handle your estate will know where to find it. If you don't want to put all of your passwords for your various accounts, which will be something we talk about next week, into that notebook, maybe you'll have instructions of how to track down the passwords. You know, they're in my safe deposit box, or they're buried in my underwear drawer, or remember the place that I hid this. Well, that's where the passwords are too, so that nobody else can figure it out, hopefully. But some clues. Went through this, just most of you know that my brother died suddenly a couple of weeks ago, and they had to, he owned a business as well as the personal aspects of all of these things, and his wife, who was still in shock, had to have somebody help her break into his work computer to find out bills and all that kind of stuff. And fortunately, they were able to do that. Some devices are really, really hard to get access to. So it's helpful if somebody has all of that. So the first part of this is, what does it mean for you to die well? It may be different for each one of us, but having conversations, even if they're tough, can be helpful, not only for you, but also for your loved ones. And I think that means talking openly, even when it seems hard. It may mean forgiving yourself and others to the best of your ability with God's help. So I'm going to invite you to take some time here thinking about your wishes for the end of your life. Not all of us die suddenly. Some of us know that we are dying and have time to do what we would like to do. Some of us have some things we know we want to do while we're still able to, and maybe it would be helpful for us to think that through and start planning to do them before it's too late to do them. Those of you who are online, if I knew you were attending online, I sent you a copy of this booklet. If you did not get it, I invite you, or if you haven't printed it, I invite you to take notes on whatever piece of paper that you would like as we go through these questions, and then I can provide you with a copy of the booklet so that you can have it all in one place. So sometimes we have regrets regarding the way our lives have been lived. Oh, side note, for those that didn't ask me how long we'd be here, I am committed to an hour and a half. We will be done at 11 o'clock, whether we finish the book or not today. Sometimes we wonder how our lives may have turned out if we'd made different choices. Those choices may be positive or negative or just different. So first thing to think about is, and you won't finish this today, but jot down the things that you do think about. I would still like to do or accomplish the following things. This might be take that trip. It might mean visit with certain people. It might mean do certain things like a bucket list. Who has something they're willing to share that you know, you still want to do while you're alive and can enjoy it. New Year's Eve in Times Square. Great. Carol? Going to visit your German exchange student, Anya. Okay. And her parents. Uh-huh. Gary? Finish remodeling our house. I want to see national parks. I've seen a few of them, but that's my bucket list for when I retire. I'd like to see them all, but certainly as many of them as possible. So go ahead and jot a couple of things down if you would like to. What would you still like to accomplish in your life? Okay, I know, like I said, this is going to take a while for you to do. We're not going to finish it all today, so I'll just give you a little bit of time to start jotting down some thoughts with each one. The next question is, I'd like to share the following with others or share the following about my life. So lessons you've learned that you want your friends, your children, your grandchildren to know, or an experience that you had that maybe those who loved you didn't know about. The wisdom you want to pass on for the generations. I invite you to turn maybe to whoever you came with, if you came with somebody, for a couple of minutes and work on that question and a little more on the first one as well, if you'd like to. I'm going to step back and sit with the person I came with. Okay, we have a start on that one. So let's take a look at the next two, and I'll invite you to, if you want to, talk with others for a couple minutes. The first one is, I have the following regrets that I would like to address, and I would like to reconcile with the following people or make amends before I die. Some of us have those things that are weighing heavily on us, and nothing wrong with doing it sooner rather than later. And then the next question is at the top of page 4. I want to engage in forgiveness or self-forgiveness. What kinds of load are you carrying on your shoulders that can be lifted by forgiveness or self-forgiveness? I'll give you a couple minutes to think and talk. Room's quieting down. That was a little bit tougher. Bucket list is more fun, at least in my opinion. All right, moving on then. Decisions that might have to be made surrounding your death. I'm going to guess that you are more or less familiar with the next terms, but we'll go over them anyway as you think about what medically you would like to be done, especially if somebody else is having to make those decisions for you or to help you have those decisions. Some of the terms you want to be aware of are full code. You want life-saving measures performed, such as CPR, defibrillation, and mechanical ventilation. And sometimes it's easier to do that thinking and have those discussions before it gets close to the time of being needed. Brian, can I use your mom as an example? Brian's mom is 93, and she has been for a number of years kind of thinking moderate efforts at resuscitation if her heart were to stop, go ahead and try CPR, but don't put me on a ventilator kind of thing. Well, the last time she was in the hospital, she told them that, and we had a physician who was calling us every day saying, you need to get her to change her status to do not resuscitate because of the damage that would do to her if we tried to resuscitate her. And she probably still won't go home from the hospital, but she'll be in pain from broken ribs and all of the other kinds of things, even if they don't put her on a ventilator. And I think she was envisioning, okay, so they'll try to defibrillate me, but until they get the equipment in the room, they have to do other things. So, I mean, that's a tough conversation to have with somebody who wants them to try to resuscitate, but having information helps you make the right decision. Right. Yep. Yeah. For those who are online, Betty says that was knowing what her mother wanted when her mother was in the ER and being sustained by machines or close to that. It made it much easier knowing her wishes to answer the ER doctor, because then it had been her decision and not their decision. Does that sum it up adequately? Okay. So do not resuscitate is the opposite of a full code. Full code is try everything. Do not resuscitate is that you don't want life-saving measures to be performed. You have to indicate that to your physician and sign to that effect. You may want to do it with an advance directive with 5 wishes, which is a document that last I knew was legal in Michigan. We can check with the attorney when he is here at the 3rd class, but it invites you to think through things kind of in the way this brochure does. I wish that this would happen. I wish that this would be done. I don't wish for this to happen. And it forms a medical power of attorney and advance directive legally in many states, including Michigan last time I knew. A medical power of attorney, which is something you would draw up with, along with the advance directive with your physician, that gives someone else, some specific other person, the ability to make decisions guided by your wishes, if you are unable to do it yourself. A POST, physician's order for life-saving treatment. Brian's mom has one of those posted in her apartment at the assisted living facility. Couple of other differences we've known in the last 20 to 30 years, the rise of hospice care, when you change from trying to cure a disease to focus on keeping you comfortable. And in the situation where death is imminent, most of us are aware that you can go on hospice with a life expectancy from the disease that is most likely going to take your life of 6 months or less. That doesn't mean you can only stay on hospice for 6 months. Different people, some people graduate from hospice because their condition improves and they go back to regular treatment type medical care. There's also palliative care, similar to hospice, but focuses on treating your symptoms, for whatever serious disease or illness you might have, but death may not be as imminent. And I'm hearing more and more conversations around palliative care now for those that maybe don't qualify for hospice, but also don't want to keep fighting everything that comes up at an advanced stage or with multiple illnesses or something like that. These are tough things to think about. Atul Gawande, in his book, Being Mortal, shares another doctor's questions in their work with patients as they are making treatment decisions. We did a study on that book several years ago here. If you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. The question is, what do they understand their prognosis to be? What are their concerns about what lies ahead? What kinds of trade-offs are they willing to make? How do they want to spend their time if their health worsens? Who do they want to make decisions if they can't? And again, those of you who are not reading along in booklets, I will get one to you, or you already have one in your email possibly, but it was a lot of pages to print out, so we'll get them to you. Take time to consider then how you want to live. What will you endure? What can't you endure? There are many ways to approach and record that information. Have the tough conversations, and if you change your mind at some point, that's okay too. Now this is, these next questions are duplicated in probably both of the next 2 weeks, but just some things to think about. Do you have someone assigned as your medical power of attorney in a legal document? If so, where is the paperwork? Do you have an advance directive, instructions that will guide that person? In my mind, that's the difference between those two, and it may be combined into one document. Somebody is welcome to correct me if they know that. Okay, it's part of your will. Okay. Got for both of our mothers, we've got separate documents, but they were all done at the same time. Again, that's something that your family needs to be able to find and take to the hospital quickly, or it already needs to be in your chart so that it can be accessed quickly. 5 wishes is a different form of that, and the post has to be signed off on by a doctor if you have one of those. I believe that'll be a question for the attorney when they're here. And your document may combine the two already. I don't take credit for knowing the legal stuff at that level. Okay, I will jot that down in my copy. And also my colleague who prepared this may be in a different state, and some of those laws differ from state to state. Okay, turn to page, are there any other questions? Which I can either try to answer or find the answers to. Okay. This is something that this next section is something that I've thought of, and maybe it's probably something I should have been taught to talk to people about in seminary, but I wasn't. With more and more people, perhaps people living longer, people using hospice services at the end of their life. If you do know that you are dying and have a chance to contribute your preferences to the type of environment you want that to happen in. It's not just, do I want to be at home if possible, which most people probably want and not everybody can manage at home. But what do I want to be happening in the room where I am as I am getting closer to death? Do I want to listen to music? And if so, what kind of music is important to me? What do I enjoy the most? Do I want to be read to? Do I want a particular kind of book? You know, do I want comedy? Do I want spiritual reflection? Do I want a Western? Do I want a light romance novel to try to give my mind a little something to entertain it or to occupy it? Do I want scripture read to me? Do I want to have people reminisce about my family, my friends, trips, what my life has been like? Some people will do that for you. they'll start talking about the past and kind of reliving their life and want to share that with others. Maybe some people will want to look at pictures if they're still able to be up and in a chair or at a table and doing that. Do I want people to share the ways they've seen God work in my life? Do I want people to pray for me, to pray with me? Also helpful as clergy if you want somebody to pray for you in a certain way. Do you want me to pray for healing? Do you want me to pray for a peaceful transition? Do you want me to pray that your loved ones are going to be okay without you? Those suggestions, I think most clergy people would welcome if there's a specific way you want me to pray. And you may not be able to put that in here now because you don't know what your situation is going to be, but if you're able to communicate and have a preference, please say so. I would like white noise, something that blocks out any other noises coming from outside my room. I want people to share jokes. I would like my hands held or massaged. I want the following movies, television shows, or news playing or not playing. What do you not want to be hearing in the background? Do you want visitors? When Brian's grandmother was dying, and really this is the only clue that she was dying from what I can remember, she summoned us all, one at a time, into her room from the nursing home corridor. Okay, now I want to see Jean. Okay, now I want to see Brian and Karen. Okay, now I want to see this one. And she died within a week. What other wishes do you have? Somebody I visited at the hospice home, they took in, she had been an artist, and they took in some of her paintings, surrounded her with her paintings. Do you want to be left alone? And some other things to think about if you're in the dying process. I don't want to die alone. Maybe you want somebody with you the whole time. That will be, would you think that'll be a comfort or might ease your fear? Even if you are a person of faith looking forward to what's on the other side of death, it doesn't mean you're excited about the dying process. So maybe you want somebody with you to walk through that with you. Vista, Grand Villa has a NODA, No One Dies Alone program. And when Bill Reed was dying, every time I went to visit him, there was somebody in the room with him as part of that program. And they would leave for the time I was there, but he was always had somebody with him. And I thought that was a great thing to offer people. I don't want someone watching over me or just staring at me. I don't want a certain person or certain people there, even if it means reconciliation. Now, if you want to reconcile with them, that's different. But maybe somebody has hurt you, and this is from a practical perspective. You may say, as a person of faith, I'm willing to try, but you may also say, you know what? It's too much. I don't want to use what little energy I have left dealing with that person. Organ donation is something you might also consider if you haven't already. It's a way to assist others. Choosing to be an organ donor can affect choices you make regarding other end-of-life decisions. And so your family members and medical professionals need to know these wishes. So you might want to say, I want to be an organ donor, donate all usable organs and tissues, or donate the following organs and tissues. You might put anything that can be used in that section. If that's where you are, you don't know what is possible, given your health or whatever, but just say, take what you can use. Donate my body for research to such and such an organization. I've been part of helping a couple of people arrange that in advance. Then planning for your funeral or memorial service. This is also something that is very helpful to your family. The first things are basic practical things, but then there's also things here about a service. A few of you may have paperwork on file with the church already, giving your preferences, or you've taken the church's paperwork and filled it out and your family knows where it is. Either of those things is fine. This would do the same thing if your family could show it to me or whoever is officiating at your funeral. But again, it helps them with planning. It takes away the factor of guilt. Oh, you can't cremate mom. Well, somebody may really have a problem with that, but on the other hand, maybe somebody just isn't sure that mom wanted to be cremated. So that's in here. Or, this isn't a nice enough casket, so we need to buy a bigger casket or a fancier casket. Well, if your wishes are known, you don't own the process anymore, but at least you've had a chance to express what's important to you. So, do you prefer burial or cremation or both? Some people bury cremains in a cemetery plot. Other people scatter them. Or columbarium is the above ground marble niches, sometimes in a building, sometimes a freestanding thing. Okay. So I have a cemetery or columbarium in mind. You can let people know where that is. I have a burial plot. I want a grave marker. I already have a grave marker. You might have bought a family marker and all it needs is your name engraved on it. I'm being cremated, so it doesn't matter. I want my ashes either buried or spread. If you know where you want them spread, you want them spread at the cabin up north, you want them sprinkled at sea, you want others to have your ashes. I want them buried with my spouse's ashes when they die, those kinds of things. You've got all kinds of choices. I would suggest, and this is a light moment that some of you have heard me tell already, the longtime organist at the church that I grew up in wanted his ashes scattered over the church grounds out of a helicopter shortly after 9/11. Scared the people of the school next door. If possible, I would like to have the service performed by. Legally, a minister is not required. Easier even than, a wedding, at least somebody's got to be licensed by the state. Anybody can perform your service. So you can list that, who you would like to have perform the service. If there's a visitation along with the service, do you want an open casket? Do you want a closed casket? Do you want no casket present? And that really is unrelated to whether you're going to be buried in a casket. You can still have, it's generally called a memorial service if there's no casket present, a funeral if there is a casket present. If you're being cremated, do you want the urn present if possible? Sometimes, depending on your timing, it may not be back. The ashes may not be back soon enough. The cremains, excuse me. The more the body or the cremains are present, the more the focus is on you, particularly if it's an open casket. And maybe that is really important to you. The more focus, the less physical presence there is, the more focus on God. It's always both, at least in a Presbyterian service, but you can sway where that focus is. What do you want the service to look like? Are there songs or hymns that you want to be included? And you've got a place here to say why those are important to you. Betty's mom had something in her form from the church of a particular piano piece. She had been a pianist and organist, which most of us who knew her when she died, from the church didn't know, and it was a classical piece. So we found it and played a recording of it at the funeral. What stories or scriptures or poems or inspirational sayings or prayers do you want to have included specifically? And if it's something that we might not be able to find just by the title, you can always put it in this notebook you're going to create. Do you want flowers? Do you want particular kinds of flowers? I don't want gladiolas, hate gladiolas. Take note of that, Brian. I want memorial gifts in lieu of flowers designated to certain organizations that are important to me or that represent what I stood for in life. Or maybe, a lot of people for the disease that they've been treated for more research for one of the organizations related to it. About me, I want to wear the following clothing. I remember my grandmother saying, this is what I want to be buried in. I'm hanging on to it. Some others saying this is the picture I want to have out at my funeral. I want my hair and makeup done as follows. I want the following jewelry. I want the following buried or cremated with me. Something in the casket. Do you want a luncheon after the service? And if so, what does that look like? Some options. Do you want a video or a photo display of you with your loved ones? And if possible, please include the following photos and describe them well enough or have copies of them put away so that somebody can find them easily. What other thoughts do you have regarding your funeral or memorial service? Or do you not want, did I say that? Do you not want a service at all? A young man who used to go to this church died after he was moved away. Tim Yost, for the few of you who might know him, he was a surfer. They had a surfer's funeral out in California, which a lot of surfers paddled out and I think scattered his ashes at sea. And then for family and friends back here, he was apparently a sports fan. So on a big football game weekend, they invited everybody to come and celebrate his life and to wear their favorite sports jersey. Some people may want something other than a church or funeral home funeral. I always strongly encourage people, if they're discussing it with me, to have some kind of service or memorial gathering or something. Closure doesn't end grief, but it gives people a way to say goodbye. Our culture kind of expects a way to say goodbye. And there is a strong trend now to not have anything. I'm seeing that more and more. Okay, the question is if you're going to be buried in a different state, is it traditional to have a service where you're at and a committal service where you're going to be buried? Right, at the graveside. It's whatever you want. I think it's appropriate. That's what we did for my dad. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. We had different people in each location. We had family that came to the graveside committal service that didn't travel, several hundred miles for the funeral. I've often wondered, for someone who has moved away to live near children when they were older, you might end up having two services, maybe one more formal than the other, or a gathering at a restaurant. I mean, funerals do cost money, and a lot of churches don't charge for someone who's part of that church. And so it may not cost you anything to have a second gathering, if that's a question, but find a way to allow friends to be involved. Now with Zoom and with Facebook Live, it's easy to involve people who aren't physically present if somebody can get them connected with the service that way too. So tradition, maybe, probably, yes, it's traditional, but whatever works for you, you can do. I'm going to give you a 5-minute or so break. If you need to get up, get a drink of water from the water cooler outside, use the restroom, whatever, and then we'll go through most of the rest of this. I found the 5 wishes brochures. This is a combination of an advance directive and medical power of attorney. The state of Michigan, there's an extra paper in most of them that points out that the state of Michigan requires whoever you have assigned as your healthcare agent to accept being your healthcare agent. So hopefully the copies that are back there all have the extra piece of paper in them. This is simply one way to go, but it's kind of, and I'm sorry, this is computer speak, but it's a user-friendly way to think through your medical wishes. So I put those on the table where at the back of the sanctuary. And this is what we've had at church, or a lighter blue paper that asks some of the same questions in here that we keep on file here for people. You don't need to do it multiple places as long as whoever's planning your funeral or memorial service knows where your information is. You don't have to have one of these on file with us, but if you want to, or you want to have one for your kids, it's just 2 pages of your basic personal data, which will have a page in here for that too, like family members and date of birth and parents' full name and stuff like that, and then planning for your funeral or memorial service. So you're welcome to take either of those if you want them as well. Gary reminded me, when you have a healthcare power of attorney and are assigning responsibility to your first and probably second and maybe third choices of who's going to take that responsibility to make medical decisions if you cannot do it yourself, you have to have witnesses. And the witnesses who sign that cannot be a member of your family. They cannot be anybody who is providing your medical care, which means that, is there any other limitation? I'm guessing you may deal with this some at work. Well, you're an employee of the hospital. Okay. Right. Somebody that doesn't have a stake in your medical care, whether you live or die, inheriting things from you, which makes it difficult once you are in a hospital or care facility to get a witness in there to sign it for you. So it's not impossible. Yeah, and COVID has made it even harder to get a witness in there. So that's something you will want to take care of, is getting that choice made, getting whoever you've chosen to sign it, and then getting a witness or 2 witnesses, I think, to sign, yes, that this is really who they say it is making these arrangements. And right, doing it while you're still competent to make that decision, and nobody's going to question that you're competent to make that decision, or at least not have proof if they try to question it. Dawn works in the hospital, so that's why I was asking her for information. Okay, we are at the bottom of page 11, and thank you for that, and thank you for the reminder, Gary, about witnesses. Legacy and gifts. I may have mentioned this already, but this is planning. This is not a legal document as a will or a codicil or even a note along with the will is. The following church, faith community, organizations, clubs, causes are important, and I want them to receive the following gifts from my estate. You have to work that out with an attorney, what things need to be specified. If you have one child who's going to inherit everything and you trust them to make the gifts, maybe you don't need to put it in the will. Maybe it still needs to be in the will for tax purposes. I don't know. I know a lot of people for who personal possessions are to be distributed have pieces of masking tape on the back of furniture saying this grandchild gets this and this grandchild gets this. Those of us that have houses full of collectibles and things like that, your descendants may not want all of the things that you think they should have. You don't need to tell them that if that's necessary. We have a number of family pieces my mother thinks need to stay in the family, and we'll just let her believe that as many of them as family members want will stay in the family, and don't tell her my secret, but they may not all stay. Fortunately, some of the key ones, I have cousins that want. And then are there, particular items that you want to go to particular individuals? And if so, you will want to talk to your attorney and maybe your executor about how that is best going to happen. Writing your obituary. It used to be that the funeral home would gather all the information and then write their obituary. I have found recently that many people are writing their own, then email it to the obituary or to the funeral home. You can also now put it in the paper yourself. When I first started in ministry, the newspaper would only take that information from a funeral director, so they didn't have 5 different family members calling them trying to put different things in. You might want to check that out ahead of time, but there are forms I have found online where you can submit things yourself. The longer the obituary is, the more the news media will charge you for that. I know for my brother, they just put a very brief one in the newspaper, and then the funeral home had their website, and that got forwarded to other people that they wanted to notify. So there are ways around having a 3-column obituary if you look at a printed newspaper and still getting all that information out without having to pay for it. And of course, many of us expect that most of our friends would see it online anyway. Betty? Okay. Okay. When Betty's parents died, they sat around as a family and told stories, and one of her sisters-in-law took notes, and they used that to help plan the obituary. And I happened to be there, so it also helped me to plan the service. One of my techniques is to get people to tell stories. Okay. Yep. So some people already have their obituaries written, might feel like you need to cut it down for a cost standpoint. But anyway, these are some of the things that you may want to have in an obituary. Name, date of death. You don't know that yet, obviously. Birth date and location, baptismal date, may be important to you to have in there. Schools, confirmation, graduation, high school, marriage, life events, activities, accomplishments that can also help whoever is going to do your eulogy or the funeral. If you have some of these things jotted down, who has preceded you in death, who survives you or may survive you, particular photo you want on the remembrance folder. Obviously the funeral homes have the pretty little ones. A lot of people make their own or take them to a printer and get them made now if they want something custom on it. And you can write your own obituary if you would like to. Some of these other things we will get into then next week, but this is a good place to begin jotting those things down. Your full legal name, your probably gender would be more appropriate than sex, but however you want to introduce or that, race. I don't know what's required on death certificates. I've read them. I've never paid that much attention. So this is mostly what came with the book. Your date of birth, your marital status at the time of death, the name of spouse. If you've been married more than once, you might want to have that information there. Father's legal name, mother's maiden name, your legal residence, your social security number. If you don't want to put that in this book, that's fine, but your survivors will need to know how to find that. That's an important number. City and state where you were born, occupation, highest level of education. Did you serve in the armed service? And if so, the details about that. Not only are there some death benefits related to that, and they're not huge, but there's also the aid and attendance benefit for any who have served during wartime and their surviving spouses, even if you have not seen combat, if you were in the armed services between particular dates and your income and assets are such that you qualify, you can get a benefit, a pension. And not everybody knows about that. So that's worth looking into. And if you want to check dates, I can find those relatively easily, but it's called aid and attendance benefit. Do you have minor children or dependents that you need to plan for? Are you a business owner? What happens to your clients and customers and or business partner? Do you have long-term care insurance? Have you talked with your financial planner to assist you in planning for the unexpected? Okay, where are your things? Do you have a safe deposit box? Do you have a fireproof box at home? If you have a safe deposit box, where is it? Where's the key for it? You might want to check when you're talking to an attorney or at the bank or institution where your safe deposit box is. My parents live in Bristol, Virginia. Well, my mother now. And Bristol is that town that's in the Geico commercial where the lizard is standing in two states at the same time, Virginia on one side of the street and Tennessee on the other side of the street. If Dad had lived in Tennessee or had the safe deposit box had been in Tennessee, it would have been sealed when he died. Because he lived in Virginia, my mother as co-owner was able to get into it. The fact that she was co-owner would not have mattered. Would have taken court order or something to allow her to get into it. And the bank already knew he died at 6 a.m. And by the time my mother got to the bank, they knew he was dead. So there's some system there. So you want to make sure your documents, not only that your survivors know where they are, but they are accessible. Your healthcare power of attorney should not be in a safe deposit box. Anything people are going to need immediately upon your death should not be in a safe deposit box. A copy of it maybe, but people need to access it. So you're going to need death certificates to close accounts. The information listed here, legal name, all that sort of thing is going to be involved in filling out the death certificates. Funeral director that handles your remains will do that for you, even if you're not having a service. Somebody with a license is going to have to take care of your remains. Get more copies than you think you're going to need of death certificates. Yeah, okay. So yeah, more than you need because you never know when one's going to come up and different state laws. Yeah, and some people will require a certified death certificate and some people will accept a photocopy and some will accept your word. Not very many, but some will accept your word. And I've heard lately that cell phone companies are one of the toughest. Yeah, we've been fighting Brian's. Yeah. Yeah. Brian's dad died 10 years ago. We just got his name off a bank account. So they wanted us to close an account and open a new one to get his name off it. We were finally able to do it without having to do that. So. Thank you. It costs more per copy if you go back and get death certificates later than if you order them at the time of death. Yeah, we're talking about how many death certificates you need to get. And that's really going to vary from person to person, 7 to 10, maybe. But depending on how many different companies you have investments with, bank accounts with, utilities with, which ones will take the photocopy, which ones won't. So, I mean, that's something as you're planning, if you're saying, okay, next year when I meet with my financial advisor, how many do they think I need for what things? When I meet with my attorney, what do they recommend? And then you can kind of get more of an idea. And it's not exorbitant, but for someone unlimited, difference between $5 a copy and $25 a copy or whatever is going to add up if you have to get a lot more later. So where are your insurance policies, investments, bill information? Who's the person that someone needs to get in touch with to get your life insurance process moving? Your loved ones should know that. Who's your attorney? Who has your power of attorney? And there's more than one kind of power of attorney, but I'll let the folks from legal services find that out. Who is the executor of your state? Where is your will? I do not know what a DD 214 is. Military discharge paper. Okay, that is important for somebody to be able to find. Usernames and passwords. We'll talk more about that next week. You have a question? You're just stretching? Okay. Who's your physician? What's your preferred hospital? Who needs to be notified? Who needs to be notified before somebody puts it on Facebook that you've died? Worth thinking about. Yeah, your kids. That's always a good choice. Your spouse. Okay. Parting thought. I'm guessing this is a tool. Go on. Yes. At least two kinds of courage are required in aging and sickness. The first is the courage to confront the realm of mortality, the courage to seek out the truth of what is to be feared and what is to be hoped. Such courage is difficult enough. We have many reasons to shrink from it, but even more daunting is the second kind of courage, the courage to act on the truth we find. The problem is that the wise course is so frequently unclear. For a long while, I thought that this was simply because of the uncertainty. When it is hard to know what will happen, it is hard to know what to do. But the challenge I've come to see is more fundamental than that. One has to decide whether one's fears or one's hopes matter most. Do any of you have questions or thoughts you need to share? Those of you who are online, if you want to unmute yourself and share something or put something in the chat, you're welcome to do that as well. Okay. Well, we will see you next Saturday morning then. Feel free to hang around and chat for a few minutes. Next week, we're going to talk about a lot of the practical stuff like passwords and accounts and things you might not think about that other people need to know after you die to be able to settle your affairs. And as I said, I've got a book I'm going to give you. Those of you who are doing it online will get you copies of that book as well. Okay, let's close and, oh, you're still stretching?
No, I just wanted to, it struck me as I was looking at this form that in this that once so I just thought,
yes.
Everybody
Humorous story. Okay, Cindy, are you in chat? Okay. Just thanking us. You're welcome. Let's close in prayer. Carry us forth from this place, oh God, with your love in our hearts, our desire to show our love for those who will survive us, those who will walk through the valley of the shadow of death beside us, that we may make things a little easier for them while we are able. Help us always to trust in you that in spite of these practical details, there are also more important and glorious things that we may see on the horizon. In Christ's name, amen. Okay, my humorous story is they had a Bloody Mary bar at my brother's funeral. Yeah, I don't think you'll find too many funeral homes that'll let you do that, but this one did, so.